Welcome back to your Daily Dose. My name is Robert. This is my pal, Matt Eagles. And Matt, we were talking a little about the power of storytelling, the individual nature of the disease of Parkinson's, how it affects the community. And we teased off with this idea of metaphor, and you used a great one, that everyone has their own Everest. There is the literal Everest and people who have climbed it with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And then there are the figurative ones, which could be to make your own cup of coffee, as you mentioned. That could be an Everest in the day. However, it is no less of an accomplishment. Speak toward metaphor and that idea and how people can empower themselves by using them.
I think everybody, as I mentioned, has got faces different challenges. And it's super important to realize that the challenges are unique to you and your own network. And within the storytelling community, no one story is better than others because there's so many that are untold. I mean, I'm lucky. I often have a platform to be able to tell my story, but others don't. Doesn't mean they're less important. They're not. They're just as important as everybody else's. And it's important to realize that, people struggle. People say people are fighting this disease every day. And it's important to realize that, I mean, excuse me one second, I keep on this. If I disappear off the screen, I'm not being rude. Simply because my body wants to throw me on the floor at the moment. But no,
You're doing great.
No, it's using metaphors, and I think helps people understand. I mean, I often use a story of the Wizard of Oz, actually, particularly when I'm explaining my condition to sort of the younger generation. And when I freeze, I say I'm like the Tin Man, and my medication is the oil. When I'm dyskinetic like now, I'm a little bit like the Scarecrow, dancing down the yellow brick road. But I think the other thing is the lion. I think everybody who's dealing with Parkinson's has courage like the lion. They might not feel it all the time, but believe me.
Well, I love that you brought up courage, because you're right. People, in my experience, and I don't know if you've seen, but I run a couple programs that speak toward the storytelling aspect. That's part of what I got my PhD in, right?
Right, yeah.
They have a hard time in the two groups I ran, seeing themselves as heroes, number one, which is difficult. If you're not the hero of your own journey, who is? And then secondly, the idea of courage. Well, they, externalize that. Well, that person's courageous. That person's courageous. I think if we remember that courage is not the absence of fear, it is feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
Exactly.
That's where, because people think courageous of like, the hero who's like, I'm fine, everything's great. It's like, no. Heroes hurt. They are terrified. They just go. They do anyway. And your mindset that you're speaking of and connecting to others, I think those are lubricants to help people get through the fear and go anyway.
You're absolutely right. There was no courage without fear. And I think a lot of it with Parkinson's is fear of tomorrow.
Yes.
But tomorrow never comes, so you have to deal with what you have now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because you mentioned earlier on, the image, that the clinical images that are used, and if people Google, which that can almost be, a death sentence to do that to yourself, because you look at the end stage, right? Yeah. Instead of living now in the moment when you have the influence and you can do great things, you're thinking about 10, 20, 30 years down the road. Yeah. And it's like, wait a minute, what about being present? What I want to get into in our next episode is what you do physically and regularly to keep yourself present. So join us for our next episode of the Daily Dose. We'll be back with Matt Eagles.